Okay then, Raiders, we are back and we've got loads to go over today as the Arc Raiders design lead Virgil Watkins has had an interview with Games Radar with regards to the benefit to cost ratio for things such as the Bobcat and the Tempest, which means that it should potentially be receiving a bit of a buff inside of the balancing very, very soon around how it is that purples work inside of the game. We've also got to talk about the Tfue situation because it seems to have taken a bit more of a turn. The one guy who's been banned from most games is now taking another strike, and we've got to take a look at some other things happening inside of the game right now, as we already know that there's now an online server bypass method and the team are aware of it. We're going to take a look at everything that you guys need to know today. If you haven't already, smash that beautiful like button and subscribe with post notifications turned on. It'd be greatly appreciated. Make sure you check out our incredible sponsor, Gamer Subs, the company that offer esports athletes and gamers alike with the most effective and healthy energy drink option, and we've got some cool sets, one of which is this one right here, releasing soon. So hit the link in the description, use code CloudPlays at checkout for a cheeky discount. And if you want to get your hands on some free Raider tokens, very simply head down to the comments and put in any coloured love hearts you like, and it'll enter you in. We have got loads of news to go over, so we're going to be announcing that one in a couple of days' time. With that being said, let's dive into the game and see what's happening right now inside of Arc Raiders. So we're going to start off with the juicy bits, as this article went up on Games Radar with regards to the Bobcat and Tempest, or at least those being the example. The main article title of this one states, cost should not inherently fill a skill gap. Arc Raiders dev admits that we're definitely a bit off on some of the cost to benefit ratios for guns like the Bobcat and Tempest, but says all weapons have to be usable. Now, right at the beginning of this article, he goes straight into the big info and states that any given weapon in capable hands should be capable of winning a fight if you're playing smartly. Even the worst weapons have to be good, otherwise the gunplay that's core to Arc Raiders would essentially just like break down. I think that it has to remain true, but I think that we're definitely a bit off on some of the cost to benefit ratios. Certainly on those higher tier weapons, it was trying to follow a curve of by spending more and more money, you're gaining an edge. Not a clear one, like I'm using a purple weapon, therefore I win this fight, period. We don't want that, but cost should not inherently fill a skill gap or a tactical awareness gap of things like that. Now, they've already started making these maneuvers as we started to see some of the nerfs that came into play with things like the trigger nade and the kettle, and we know that they're working on the Stitcher for the balance update at some stage soon, but they have now started talking about bigger movements inside of the game, such as the Tempest or the Bobcat. He states specifically that we're looking at, as we keep going with some of the balancing, to probably make the cost-benefit ratio feel a little better, certainly on the high end, because we do want people to be excited to get a Tempest or a Bobcat or things like that. If we're way undershooting how people feel about that, then that'll take some adjustment. Now, this is obviously one of the biggest topics going on at the moment because, well, the nerfs inside of the game are taking a more prevalent movement. Therefore, some buffs inside of the game should really push through the underhand and make those purples a little bit more viable. The problem is what the game is versus what the people want for the game are two different things. Like, we can tell quite clearly by the way that the main weapons perform inside of the legendary sector that this is a PvE game that has PvP in it. The problem is people want these weapons to react as if it is just a PvP game, therefore being more viable in a PvP substance. How it is that they're actually going to materialize that, I have no idea, or even if they will, as the developers are pretty much standing tall on the fact that this is primarily a PvE game with the PvP factor. And sometimes it doesn't even require the weapon itself to have the rarity value sort of like boosted in terms of how it is that it performs. Sometimes it can just move its rarity value. They give an example right here that states, if it comes to pass that, as an example I'm making up right now, we like that the nature of what the Bobcat is, but it's performing at this bracket, then we can consider moving it up or down later on, filling that niche with a different weapon. I don't think that we're precious about where they sit on that spectrum, so if it makes sense to buff it to live it up to that implied potential, or if it makes sense to drop the rarity so that it stays where it is because of its performing, then we'll do that. So essentially, just as a example, quote unquote, they could essentially take the Bobcat and just put it down to a blue variant because it doesn't seem to play as well as maybe some of the other purples inside of the game. It, for me, is a very, very good way of looking at things, and hopefully they do make that turn at some point or another. I'll make sure to leave the full article in the description below if you guys want to go and check that out, but for me, this was an incredible read and a really big insight. Moving on from that, though, we've got to talk about Tfue. We reported yesterday that he was essentially banned for unknown reasons and then became unbanned, apparently for using a foot pedal. Now, it's really, really weird because some clips have now started surfacing of some really strange gameplay, such as this one that you're seeing here on screen. Jake Lucky actually posted up this and states, okay, wait, maybe Arc Raiders should ban Tfue, dear lord, as he takes an O-spray and just does repeated shots of a no-scope movement and hits on target. Now, is this absolutely random because this is either a stream privilege that I've never ever seen before, but then also people are saying a lot of different things, such as he's got a crosshair overlay on his screen. I don't really know exactly how that one would make any difference to your gameplay at all in terms of hitting 4 no-scopes in a row. It doesn't make any sense to me at all, but this is definitely something to be looking at, and unfortunately these streamers do tend to get away with it a lot. Tfue's been hammered with this one on numerous other games in the past and banned from multiple, so we'll see how that one plays out. Moving on from that, though, we've got to talk about the latest skin inside of the game, as a lot of people have been kicking off about the Abyss set. It was on people's radar to be one of the better sets inside of the game, and somebody has actually AI imaged the bottom half again to what it could potentially look like instead of what we've got. I don't know about you, but this one just looks so much better to me. And we've also got to talk about the issues happening with the server bypass method actually being revealed at the moment and the source code coming out inside of the game, meaning that it's now cracked the game itself and people can download it free of charge, meaning that if you are playing on PC, you are going to come across a hell of a lot of cheaters inside of this game. It's going to be happening very, very frequently. And CM Jackdaw has now finally stated on Discord that the team are already aware of it, but they thank you for making sure. They'll be removing the messages with details, but rest assured the team is informed. Now, I do know that they're actually looking into it. I don't know the ins and outs of how this game actually works in terms of what it is that they can actually do, but I don't know how this is going to play out for the online model. Looter shooters and extraction shooters, let alone an extraction shooter riddled with loot, is going to be a high movement for hackers and cheaters. Hopefully they manage to get this one patched up real quick and we can get rid of all of those accounts. Because months down the line, we decided to take a look at the achievements inside of the game and what the percentages would be, primarily on Steam because it's the broader side of the community, holding over 50% of the total player base on Arc Raiders right now. And we have officially seen that out of all of the players that have played this game, 12 million copies sold, reaching level 75, which is your max level gate, only 10% has actually managed to do that. Now, that either says that there is a lot more accounts on there that are inactive than we think, or people are more into the casual frame of things. So making sure that we make the changes to the game that are not for that 1% top tier club is definitely something worth looking into. And finally, we've got to take a look at this right here, because this post went up by Rooster and I actually was a little bit blown away. I don't know if it's real or if it's even something that is happening inside of the game right now. I have also seen a few Reddit posts that corroborate this and do state that this has happened to them, as somebody is spawning in with 20 seconds remaining. Now, if you don't have gear fear, then you probably do now, because I do not want to be spawning in with 20 seconds remaining just to have my gear ripped out of me after that 20 seconds. Absolutely wild, and hopefully it's not real, but I just wanted to bring it to people's attention and ask you guys if you've actually experienced this as of yet. And finally, we've got to look at the top comments from the previous video, as the expedition updates have now been made aware. We don't know what it is that they're exactly going to do, but we did speak about some of the potential moves that they are making over at Embark Studios in the last video, and we've got to take a look at the top comments, as you guys had a lot to say. This first one states right here, I miss having a 2x loot zone with access to raider hatches. Really helped me loot up with the boys. Now, loot is probably one of the biggest things inside of the game right now, so much so that some people are actually complaining that they're bored because they don't have their PvP lobbies with the quote-unquote newbie players now that the aggression-based matchmaking is actually out, and they're just essentially saying that the loot is not good enough. I do have to admit, actually, when it comes to actual weaponry, blueprints are now not that bad, but as terms of actual weaponry, I don't really find anything out in the wild in terms of like Bobcats or any Tempests or anything like that. I find a lot of blueprints and we can now craft them, but it would be really nice if we just got the weapons ping up every so often. Maybe it's just me with the bad luck, but let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. This next one right here, coming from Iron Waffle, states, one thing Cold Snap did that was good for PvP was it slowed down third parties. You can't just ape run to gunshots across the map without having to stop to warm up. Now, this is one thing that I actually really enjoyed about the game in terms of Cold Snap, was that it essentially slowed everything down. It made things a little bit more viable in terms of having to think about what you had to do, and I really enjoyed the narrative for it. I'm really hoping that they do something like this very soon. We already know that the Toxic Swamp is due to come at some stage, maybe next week, but we'll have to wait and see. And finally, this one right here coming from Time Ranger states, if winter brought the cold snap, imagine summer having a heat wave event. This would be absolutely bonkers, and I could imagine it now. And I think that somebody said in my stream just yesterday that imagine the heat wave with a stamina decrease. Essentially, instead of depleting your health, it would deplete your stamina because you'd overheat. Absolutely wild. I'd love to see it. Nonetheless, unfortunately, that's all we got time for today. If you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe, post notifications turned on. Appreciate your faces. And as always, I'll see you in the clouds.